He didn't anticipate seeing him there, but you won't believe what Barron Trump did when he discovered his high school janitor at the age of 80. He didn't enter with cameras. On a calm Wednesday morning, a tall young man in jeans and a navy jacket entered the familiar front doors of Sarasota Hills Preparatory Academy without an entourage, the media, or even a bodyguard. Since he hadn't visited the school in almost 5 years, most people assumed he preferred to keep to himself and wasn't one to post or do interviews, so they tried to follow him everywhere. Barron had mastered the art of vanishing into everyday life, at least when he so desired, and today he wished to return to the location that, for better or worse, had influenced a portion of his identity. He paused for a moment, a bit amused, but the receptionist recognized him at first. She looked up, smiled politely, and grabbed for the visitor badge. Name, please. Barron Trump. She didn't create a disturbance, but her eyes expanded somewhat more in surprise than excitement. She gave him the badge, nodded, and gestured toward the administrative office, which is room 103. Miss Delaney is waiting for you. Barron thanked her and continued down the hallway, where the same beige walls and green lockers were still there, as if time hadn't changed. Students went by him unnoticed, and teachers hardly looked up, exactly how he wanted it. He was there to complete a silent donation for a scholarship program in memory of one of his classmates, who had died in a car accident years ago. There were no name plaques or announcements, just a check and a handshake, but as he passed the old gym, something stopped him. He was using a damp rag to wipe down a window in the far corner of the hall. He had a slender frame, curved shoulders, and a slight limp in his left foot, as well as that old tune he used to hum softly and off-key, like a lullaby from a time that wasn't there anymore. He looked older, thinner, and his hair, which had been peppered with gray, was now almost white. Barron recalled Senator Trump. Mr. Alvarez chuckled quietly. "You got tall." Barron approached, uncertain of how to respond. "You're still here." After the pizza parties and pep rallies, Mr. Alvarez shrugged and gently wiped his hands on his work pants, saying, "I still need someone to clean up." Barron glanced down at the mop bucket next to him. It was the same model they had used in school, with the same worn wheels and squeaky rolling sound, but you're 80 now, so you'll be 81 next month. "Keep the legs moving and the heart moving," Mr. Alvarez said. Barron gave him a serious look. When Barron was 15, there was a week when everything seemed to be falling apart. A fight with his damned, a poor physics grade, rumors circulating through the hallways about things that weren't true. Mr. Alvarez saw him slumped by the lockers and sat next to him on the bench. He didn't ask questions, just said, "Some days feel heavy, but you keep moving." There was something quiet in Mr. Alvarez's eyes, something tired but steady. He hadn't changed much, at least not in the ways that mattered. It was a brief moment, but it stuck. "Do you need to work?" "That's how you get through it." When Barron asked cautiously, Mr. Alvarez turned aside and laughed once more, but more like a sigh this time. "The term, Nita, is amusing. I have some savings and a pension, but after my wife passed away, the house became quiet. This job helps me keep a rhythm, and the kids keep me young even when they are noisy." For a brief moment, they stood quietly while the mop water rippled slightly in the bucket next to them. "You were always nice to us, even when we didn't deserve it," Barron said slowly as he nodded. "It's odd how some memories remain clear even when everything else becomes hazy." As Barron left that hallway, the past returned to him in small details rather than large moments. Mr. Alvarez grinned once more and tapped the side of his temple. "People remember how you made them feel, and that's the only legacy worth keeping." However, it wasn't just the mob that attracted Barron's attention. Freshman year, first week of school, he had been dropped off by Secret Service dressed in a blazer 2 sizes too big, trying not to stick out, but everyone already knew who he was. Some kids kept their distance, others tried too hard to befriend him, He felt out of place in both groups. One morning, it was raining hard. Barron had forgotten his umbrella in the car. He stepped through the side entrance dripping wet, trying not to curse under his breath. That's when Mr. Alvarez appeared with a stack of folded towels. Take one, he'd said, otherwise you'll be sneezing through second period. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't even act like Barron was anyone special, just a wet kid who looked uncomfortable. From then on, Barron noticed him more. He wasn't just the janitor who mopped the floors. He was the guy who picked up trash after every pep rally without complaint, the one who knew which vending machine was broken and which hallway got cold in winter. He remembered names, remembered birthdays. He always had a pack of peppermints in his front pocket for kids who looked nervous before exams. Most students barely acknowledged him. Some joked about him smelling like bleach. A few called him Mop Man behind his back. Barron never joined in, but he didn't speak up either. He regretted that now, sophomore year, Barron had stayed late after school working on a science project. Everyone else had gone home. His glue sticks had dried out, and he was frustrated, ready to give up. Mr. Alvarez stopped by, asked what was wrong, and without a word returned 5 minutes later with a brand new pack from the supply closet. Keep it, he said, you'll complete faster. He didn't question what the project was for. He didn't ask who Barron was. He simply assisted. Why are you always so calm? Years went by after Barron had asked him once, presumably expecting some old man advice in reply. Mr. Alvarez simply laughed, because shouting won't get rid of a spill any quicker. Principals and teachers came and went, but Mr. Alvarez was always present, and his movements through the school were always unobtrusive, like background music that you don't notice until the room is quiet. Barron recalled his senior year, when he had been accepted to a northern institution. On his last day, as he was about to leave, he heard someone tap on his shoulder. Mr. Alvarez gave him a little card with the words, "Work hard, stay kind," written on the inside, and a sketch of the school building on the front. Nobody else had left him a note as straightforward and truthful. "We usually frame it and hang it in the scholarship hallway," said Barron, who was sitting in Miss Delaney's office opposite from the donation form. "You're welcome to write a message to go with it," she said. After staring at the blank spot on the form for a while, Barron turned to face the gym outside the window and slowly asked, "Is Mr. Alvarez on the payroll, like full-time?" Startled, Miss Delaney blinked. Why did Barron lean forward? "Mr. Alvarez? He still clocks in every morning and hasn't missed a shift in 3 years. I would like to arrange a private meeting with the board, and I would like." When Mr. Alvarez called her into the principal's office 3 days later, she raised her eyebrows because he was looking her in the eye and they were having an off-the-record talk. She hesitated, then nodded cautiously. "Okay, I'll make arrangements." "Thank you for making this simple," Barron remarked as he signed the form and pushed the check across the desk before getting up. For 2 days, there were whispers in the Sarasota Hills prep hallways, but no one spoke out loud. However, people noticed that Miss Delaney had canceled her regular afternoon meeting and set aside time for a special session with the school board. Some staff members heard that a well-known donor had returned one who wasn't seeking attention, so they assumed it had to be a political favor. Miss Delaney watched him leave, obviously perplexed, but she didn't stop him. Normally, a name like Trump would not appear without a camera following them, but this time, there were no headlines. When the meeting started, Barron didn't give a lengthy speech or even sit at the head of the table. Instead, he stood near the window with his arms folded and his eyes steady. "Thank you for making time," he said simply. "I'll keep this short." There was no press outside the gates, just a name on a clipboard and a gentle knock on the boardroom door. The board chair was a wiry man with silver hair named Douglas. Sweeney cleared his throat. "Thank you for your kindness. Mr. Trump, is this meeting about the scholarship fund, which is a significant addition?" Or there was a pause after Barron shook his head and said, "This is about someone who's worked here longer than any of us. I would like to discuss Mr. Rafael Alvarez." A few participants looked at each other. Sweeney an 80-year-old man who has worked for the school for decades, mostly as a maintenance man, adjusted his glasses. Yes, he's well. He insists on staying. We've tried to offer him early retirement packages in the past, but no one's ever really asked why he's still here, Barron replied, continuing to push a mop as one of the younger board members, a woman in a green blouse, pushed forward. One right, Barron said. The room became silent. I'm not requesting that you fire him. I'm asking you to respect him, Barron continued. There is a distinction. Worcestershire Sweeney stroked his chin. What are you suggesting, exactly? There was a pause before the woman asked him a gentle question that he probably didn't anticipate. Barron said, I'd like him to be called into the principal's office 3 days from now. I'll be there not as a donor or anything official, just someone who owes him more than he ever knew. Some people looked skeptical, while others were curious, but no one objected. At last, Sweeney gave a really good nod. I'll let Principal Lang know, and we'll keep it between the board and the administration. Barron nodded briefly and said, Thank you, before turning to go. The younger woman screamed out one more inquiry. Mr. Trump, he paused. Why him of all the people you could honor? Why a janitor? Barron looked at her, his voice even, because he showed more grace with a mop than most people do with a microphone. He walked out of the room without another word. Meanwhile, in the maintenance wing on the far end of campus, Mr. Alvarez clocked in like always. He replaced 2 broken ceiling tiles, changed out a water filter in the teacher's lounge, refilled paper towels in the boys' locker room. Nothing out of the ordinary until he got a call. Principal Langa's assistant asked if he could stop by the office on Friday morning. No explanation, just a request. He said sure, didn't ask why, didn't think too much about it. That was Mr. Alvarez, never the type to make a fuss, but something in his gut felt different. Not worry, just different. He looked at his reflection in the dusty glass of a supply closet door, smoothed his hair back, straightened the badge clipped to his collar. Then he went back to work. But the day Mr. Alvarez was called and everything changed. Friday morning came quietly. The sky over Sarasota was gray, not stormy, just enough to feel heavier than usual. Mr. Alvarez arrived early as always. He parked in the far corner of the staff lot, same spot he'd used for 27 years. By 7:10 a.m., he had already refilled the hand sanitizer stations in the east wing and checked the gym floor for scuff marks from last night's basketball game. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place. Then came the knock on the door. Mr. Alvarez, Principal Lang's assistant, poked in, holding a paper. They're ready for you. He dried his hands on a towel, nodded gently, and followed her down the hallway. He wasn't nervous, just curious. When he entered into the principal's office, his eyes landed on the young man sitting near the window. Barron, he rose up instantly. Mr. Alvarez, thanks for coming, Barron remarked in a calm voice. Principal Lang smiled courteously and said, I'll give you two some privacy, before pointing to the door. Suddenly, they were by themselves. I didn't anticipate seeing you again, Mr. Alvarez said, as he sat gently in the chair across from him. Barron smiled half-heartedly. I didn't anticipate returning. There was a silence. You look good, said Mr. Alvarez. You look exactly the same, said Barron. Same glasses, same shirt. 5 of these clothes in my closet make mornings easy, Mr. Alvarez said with a laugh. Barron moved forward and asked, Do you recall the day you gave me that card with the school drawing on it? Mr. Alvarez offered a cautious nod. I recall that. I still have it from graduation day. You probably don't realize how many days you helped me just by being here, Barron added. It's in my desk at home, Barron replied. Mr. Alvarez looked surprised but said nothing. That card meant more to me than any award I received that year. Mr. Alvarez gave a gentle smile. You didn't have to, but I do, Barron said. I owe you that. It wasn't awkward. It was just full of things that didn't need to be said again. Then, Barron took something out of his jacket, a slim envelope made of heavy paper that was cream in color. I came back to make a donation, he said, sliding it across the desk. But this part isn't through the school. "It's for you, Mr. Alvarez." He hadn't touched it yet, but what was inside was an offer of full retirement benefits, paid in full by me, a monthly pension, health insurance, and anything else you would need to quit working if you wanted to. For a minute, Mr. Alvarez's face remained motionless before he turned to face his hands. "You want me to quit?" he asked. Mr. Alvarez glanced at the envelope as if it might burn a hole through the desk, and Barron replied swiftly, "This isn't a request. You've earned the right to choose. Keep working if you want, but never because you have to." "Why do this for me?" he questioned quietly. "I grew up seeing people treat you like you were invisible, and you never let that affect you. That type of dignity is uncommon, so you were important to me, Mr. Alvarez." So Barron sat back and spoke quietly. "Back then, I simply didn't know how to say it." Finally, Mr. Alvarez reached out and picked up the envelope, but he didn't open it. Instead, he held it like something sacred. "You didn't have to do this," he said quietly. "I've worked since I was 12, he said, looking away and blinking hard. "I've cut grass, cleaned motels, scrubbed kitchens. Never thought anyone noticed." Barron nodded, and I did the same. They sat in silence once more. The following Monday, the school staff assembled in the auditorium for what they believed to be a routine faculty meeting. The room was filled with casual conversation from teachers, aides, front desk staff, and even the cafeteria team. No one seemed to understand why the principal had called everyone in so early, and nobody anticipated what would happen next. "I know," Barron responded, "but that's the point." Principal Lang took the podium and tapped the microphone, saying, "Thank you all for coming. Today's meeting isn't about policies or scheduling. It's about recognition." He swept up messes, fixed what others broke, and offered kindness where it wasn't asked for, and he has been walking these halls quietly for almost 30 years. Today, we'd like to repay him. Until Mr. Alvarez was summoned up to the platform, everyone was looking around in confusion. He went slowly, fixing the collar on his uniform shirt, and no one clapped, but they were still unaware of what was happening. Mr. Alvarez didn't look comfortable standing in front of audiences. He turned to Mr. Alvarez, who he said, "You were there for every student who needed you. You kept this place going when no one was watching. You gave dignity to work. Most people pretend not to see that matters. It's time someone treated you the same." Barron took a step into the light from the side of the stage, holding in one hand the folded envelope that Barron had given him just days earlier. He had no microphone, no suit, just a plain shirt, and a calm demeanor that caused the entire room to fall silent. Barron came back to Mr. Alvarez and handed him a second envelope, which included more than just a check. He glanced out over the crowd and said, "This man never asked for anything, so today we're giving him a choice." He said, "It's the paperwork for a foundation in your name. Starting this year, the Rafael Alvarez School Service Fund will provide financial support, benefits, and emergency relief to janitors, cafeteria staff, and support workers throughout the state of Florida, starting with the Sarasota School District." The room gasped, then murmured, then went silent, and then the first round of applause began slowly, but it spread like a wave until everyone in the room stood clapping louder than they had anticipated for a man they had worked alongside for years without ever really seeing. Mr. Alvarez stood motionless, looking down at the envelope in his hands, then back up at Barron. His voice was barely above a whisper, and he said, "I don't know what you don't have to say. You already done more than enough." "I came here to clean," he said, "and I stayed because I think it would help if I kept things in order, even if only a little." He paused, thinking that maybe if I kept things in order, even a little, it would help. Then he looked at Barron, and he stepped back, his hand shaking slightly. He wasn't a man used to being seen, but today he was, and Barron reached over and rested a hand on his shoulder. No pictures were taken, no interviews were shared on social media, but it happened, and the people there would never forget it. Back in the crowd, a chemistry teacher wiped her eyes, the head of the cafeteria crossed her arms, and the assistant football coach, who rarely spoke at staff meetings, swallowed hard, and the assistant football coach clapped until his hands turned red. Something started to alter within Sarasota Hills Prep in the weeks that followed. It wasn't loud or abrupt, and there weren't any banners in the hallway or a big announcement over the intercom. For starters, the changes were gradual but obvious. A small initiative called People Who Keep Us Going, where they posted a new photo custodians discovered thank you notes taped to the closet doors, and a group of juniors even started a story of someone who works behind the scenes every week. Mr. Alvarez's story was the spark that ignited the fire, but the fire continued. The way students looked at the staff changed. With no branding and no Trump name connected, Barron had discreetly funded the foundation through a legal trust. His only condition was that the fund expand gradually, one district at a time, beginning with those that were typically left off the list when budgets became tight. An Oklahoma high school contacted us to inquire about how to launch their own Alvarez Fund, followed by one in Jacksonville and one in Pensacola. In the meantime, Mr. Alvarez continued to show up for work, refusing to retire yet, saying that he had finished the school year and that he wanted to leave when the halls were noisy, not quiet. He told the principal that this was how he would know that he had done his job, and he continued to mop the cafeteria after pizza day, restock the art room with paper towels, and carry a pack of mints in his pocket, though now students occasionally asked for one just to chat. However, his uniform now bore a name tag that read Rafael Alvarez Facilities Lead 27 Years Founder RA School Service Fund, which meant something one Friday in the teacher's lounge. Mr. Alvarez sat next to the assistant librarian, drinking weak coffee from a styrofoam cup. She asked, "Have you ever considered retiring?" He laughed. "Yes, and you could have disappeared with that check." He nodded, but she smiled and said, "You think the kids get it?" He glanced out the window, where two students were holding open a side door for a maintenance worker pushing a heavy cart they were getting back to his office. For the first time in more than 10 years, Principal Lang was reviewing applications for next year's janitorial staff. They were receiving more applications than available positions, and people wanted to work somewhere that valued them. One man in Tampa wrote, "I've cleaned schools my whole life, and never once thought someone would make a fund for people like me. I'd like to work somewhere where people see us." Lang read it twice before putting it aside. Later, in room 1 to 12, a student gave a presentation on unseen heroes. She chose to write about Miss Ruiz, the night janitor, and how she once fixed a broken lock at 6 o'clock in the evening so the child who used it wouldn't get detention again. When she finished reading, the class applauded, the teacher grinned, and said, "Next up is Kyle. Who would you choose?" Kyle smiled and shrugged. The auditorium was packed again 2 months later, but this time it was for graduation, and the room was buzzing with that special blend of anxiety and relief. Mr. Alvarez, of course. I'm still trying to figure out if he's secretly famous. The room laughed, and something had changed, not in the school structure, but in its heart. The real lesson came from what Mr. Alvarez said. Parents waved from the crowd with bouquets and phones, as students in green gowns shifted around in their seats with tassels falling off their shoulders. Teachers were proud and worn out as they lined the walls. Principal Lang took the podium, gave her customary address about changes and promising futures, and presented the student valedictorian. She did a good job of talking about bravery, development, and responsibility, but then something unexpected happened. Lang went back to the microphone, cleared his throat, and stated, "We have one more speaker before we hand out diplomas." Students looked at one another. Some already knew Mr. Rafael Alvarez, whose presence has influenced this school more than any textbook or rule ever could. Before he got to the microphone, The clapping began quickly this time and wasn't courteous or prepared. Instead, it was sincere and loud. Students rose up, professors stood up, and even a few parents joined in. "I'm not a man for speeches," Mr. Alvarez said, looking out at the sea of young faces. "Some of you were freshmen when I cleaned your spilled milk off the floor. Some of you I've watched grow taller than your lockers. And some of you don't even know that I saw you crying in the stairwell after a breakup and left a tissue box nearby." Without saying a word, laughter softly rippled through the crowd. Mr. Alvarez approached slowly, holding no notes or paper. "I came here because I needed a job, but I stayed because I found something better to do." He stopped to observe that people don't always notice you outside of this building, even if you're the best at something or the quietest person in the room. He looked at the teachers and then at the cafeteria staff near the exit. But don't let that change the way you treat people, because when no one is looking and you still decide to help, that's the kind of person worth remembering. Not wanting to draw attention to himself, Barron sat close to the back row. However, Mr. Alvarez's eyes briefly met his, and they gave each other a slight nod. Nothing fancy, just recognition. Mr. Alvarez continued, "I'll tell you what worked for me, but there is no formula for a good life, no shortcut," he said. "Show up every day, be kind, don't be loud, just be kind. And then, look down at your callous hands and back up at the students." The room fell silent, and he said, "In any case, you're going out into a world that will tell you who to be. Some people will expect too much from you, while others will expect nothing at all." He then stepped back from the microphone as he left the stage, and the audience stood up once more. Later that day, when the stage lights dimmed and the final seats were folded, Barron watched silently, having nothing else to say. "You didn't mention the foundation when Barron walked by Mr. Alvarez in the parking lot," Barron remarked. "I didn't want them to remember that portion." So Mr. Alvarez grinned while clutching his car keys. "So what did you want them to remember?" Barron arched an eyebrow. After glancing at the deserted school building and realizing that someone had noticed them, Mr. Alvarez said, "That's enough." He then opened his car door, halted, and said, "You did a good thing, Barron, not because of what your name is, but because of your choice," before driving off. Because sometimes the loudest thank yous don't come with words, Barron remained there for a while, thinking about the man who chose to serve without acknowledgement and the youngsters who might now do the same. He wasn't thinking about money or headlines. If you were even slightly moved by this tale, please share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness is still important. If you haven't subscribed yet, these are the stories that are worth sharing, the ones that we live by, not simply listening to.